Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dismount show, the show about gymnastics. I'm your host, Elisabeth Rositsan, as always, and today is a really, really special episode because joining me is former Canadian artistic gymnast, three-time Olympian, and 2004 Olympic champion, Kyle Shewfelt. Kyle, thank you so much for joining me here today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So obviously, as I mentioned, you're really, really accomplished in gymnastics in the world of sports. But actually, I want to start off this interview. We're obviously going to get into all of your sports achievements. But first, I want to start off with one of your most recent achievements outside of the world of competitive gymnastics, which is your new book that's releasing in May. It's amazing. I have it right here, actually. It's called Make It Happen. Amazing book, so inspirational, and I feel like it's something that a person of any age or any gender or from anywhere in the world can read, and it's so great. So I just want to ask you, what inspired you to write a book? I mean, you already have so many accomplishments, so what inspired you to write it?
Well, like you said, I wanted to write a book that really crossed all party lines, that was going to translate to not just gymnastics, but to athletes around the world and to coaches and to parents. So that's when I was writing this book, I was inspired to write about my journey, to try to capture some of the lessons that I learned throughout my journey. I think, it's great if you go to the Olympics and you win a gold medal. But what do you do with that? How do you share that knowledge? How do you share that experience? So I wanted to capture all of that in the book. And my hope is that it can make the impact in one athlete's life or one parent's life to hear the story of how my parents were involved in my sporting career and let me have that independence and strength and making my own decisions and chasing my dream. And then I hope it can impact coaches as well to say, you know what? You can produce an athlete at the highest of levels. You can have an athlete reach the top of the Olympic podium in a happy, healthy, and nurturing environment. So that's what inspired me to write the book. And lastly, I have all these stories that are like circulating in my mind, and I love to write. So I needed to get them out on paper. So I no longer had to tell myself these stories as I ate cereal at breakfast.
That's so funny. Yeah, I mean, like there were some instances that, I almost cried, and some that I was laughing. It's such a diverse book. It was great, but also kind of going into that, was it hard to write that? Because in some parts it gets really personal. You talk about your injuries, like all the hard parts. It's not just, you show that being a professional gymnast is not just, this effortless thing like a lot of people see it. Was it hard writing about those experiences?
It was incredibly difficult. And I think that there's a part of you when you're writing a book that wants to kind of just gloss over and make it all fun and happy and pretty. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that, it's important to go to the depths of the despair that you experience. It's important to go to those places of doubt. It's important to go to those places where your confidence wasn't high and where you didn't believe in your ability. I think it's important to let the next generation know that it's the journey isn't always easy. And I think sometimes we watch these athletes compete on TV and they're just, it's so polished and it's so excellent and it looks so effortless. But the reality is that the champions made in the years leading up to that, that's just a single moment. It was really important to me to tell a story that was real, that was raw, that was authentic. And I wanted this story to resonate. I hear from so many parents, for example, of young boys who do gymnastics, who are bullied and called all the words on the spectrum of, they're bullied because they do a sport that's traditionally for girls. And I had that experience too. And so I wanted to let the young boys who read this book know that, that was something that I encountered as well. I felt it was really important during the injury phase. Those chapters are slow and they're a bit long to read, but that's the process. When you're recovering from an injury, it's long and it's slow and it's arduous. But anything that's worth doing, it takes time. Instantaneous things aren't worthwhile. And so that's what I wanted to capture in the words in the book. One of my favorite books that I've read, I love reading athlete memoirs. It's like, it's my jam. I could read a new one every day.
Yeah.
My favorite one is Andre Agassi's book. It's called Open. And what I loved that he did is he took the reader right onto the court. And you felt like you were playing in those matches. You felt like you had the tennis racket in your hand. And I wanted to also create that experience for the reader to feel like they were walking onto the floor in an Olympic final and feeling their heart beating so loud that they could feel it in their ears.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, kind of speaking about that ties into my next question. I was gonna say that when I was reading your book, and especially in those moments when you were at the Olympics, like for Sydney, then Athens, then Beijing. I mean, in all of those Olympics, like two of those I couldn't watch because I was just too little or just born. But when I was reading it, I felt like I was actually there watching you win that first ever Canadian gold medal in men's artistic gymnastics. And I felt like I was actually there. Was it hard to find the words to portray those moments? Because I feel like those are like historical moments, and I feel like you experienced so many different emotions. Was it hard to put all that on paper?
It was, yeah, it was really challenging to translate what I felt in my mind and my heart. And my senses were so heightened at those Olympic Games. You know, there was no distractions. There wasn't Facebook, there wasn't Twitter, there wasn't Instagram. I would write emails to my family, you know, my family and friends and sponsors at home. And that's how I communicated at that time. So really, the layers were peeled back, and it was just you and your thoughts. And so there was no distractions. So everything I felt, I can still smell the way the Athletes Village smelled. I can still feel the way the air felt on my skin in the gym. I was at that heightened level. I like to say it was kind of like Matrix, like everything was slow motion because it was so important and I had worked my life for it. So it did take a lot of time to try to peel back the layers and get into words. And I spent many, many hours at night sitting and writing and deleting and editing and changing and just trying to get that exact feeling of those moments. I think I captured it well. Every time I read the chapter, I get hairs standing up on the back of my neck, and I hope when I'm 85 years old, I can go back and if I have dementia, I can read back to those chapters and remember what that experience was like. It was challenging, but it was definitely rewarding to be able to capture it the way that I did.
Yeah, absolutely. And also when you write your book, I read, and there's so many different characters. There's your parents, there's your coach Kelly, there's your gymnastics friends, other coaches, your doctor, so many people that go into that. And I feel like that really shows that, being an Olympic champion isn't just a one man's game. Like there has to be so many people that go into that accomplishment. When you were writing the book, did you kind of consult with those people that helped you through your journey? Did you ask what they experienced kind of to, better put their emotions into the book?
Yeah, I certainly had a lot of conversations with the difference makers in my career, and I feel so lucky. And like you said, you'd never win an Olympic gold medal alone. You never accomplish something great on your own. You have a team that surrounds you, and I feel so privileged and lucky that I had a team that allowed my journey to be an athlete-driven journey. It was parent, coach, and doctor supported. There was a lot of people and teammates supported. Federation supported. There were so many people that contributed, but this book, it was really important to me not to write a book that was like, yay me, I did all these amazing things. I wanted to write the book that was like, these are the people and these are the lessons that they extracted and put into my career. The difference makers, this is my tribute to them. They're people I think about all the time, and I feel so thankful that they put me as a priority, that they created an environment for me that was a positive one, that left me leaving the sport still loving it and wanting to give back to the sport.
And I know there's so many different parts of this book that are so special in their own way. Obviously, there's the big achievements, you winning the Olympic gold medal and other things like that, but there are also like the small details that are also really, really important. Do you personally have a favorite part of this book that maybe you had a great time writing or a great time reading? Just something that's your favorite.
Yeah, there's The chapter that was the most fun to write was when I was a teenager, and it's called Trying on Bad. And I was doing lots of silly things like drinking and smoking and sneaking out at night and stealing, and like I was being a rebel, and I was just trying so hard to um, be the exact polar opposite of the perfectionist that I had grown up to become. You know, when I was a kid, my shirt was always tucked in, my hair was always like parted perfectly over to the side, my toe point, the way my fingers were held, everything had to be perfect. And I felt this huge external pressure on that. And then in grade 8, I kind of had this like complete shift, and I decided to start lighting things on fire and being a, you know, just being your quintessential bad kid, throwing milkshakes into mailboxes, and like I did all these stupid things. But that was the funnest chapter to write. My mom, she's read the book a few times, as moms do, you know, and she said that chapter makes her laugh every time because she remembers, you know, when I got arrested and I got caught stealing, and she walked into the security office, and she's basically pulled me by my ear out of it, and she remembers that. So that was really fun. I think another chapter that was really enjoyable for me to write was the final chapter. Just trying to, you know, I don't want to give too much away to our viewers here today, but just trying to reconcile and capture, like, what do you do after you win the Olympics and after you achieve your ultimate dream and you're in your mid-20s, like creating that next thing and building that legacy. And for me, my feet never felt firm on the ground until I decided to open a gymnastics center. And to tell that story was really that was a really cathartic, and it puts me in this place of peace to know that I had the full 360 journey, and started the sport loving it, and then, you know, accomplished all of my goals and came back to be able to give back to the sport. That makes me feel like my life has a huge purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned that chapter about your rebel kind of phase when you were a teenager, because I feel like everyone goes through that. But I feel like to hear that as such an accomplished individual, such an accomplished athlete goes through that too is actually really funny. But that's great. And one of the last questions about the book that I want to ask is, what would be your goal for this book? What do you want people to feel or to know when they read it?
Thank you for asking that question. So the thing that really drew me along in the book, and I have to give a lot of credit as well to Blythe Lawrence, who was my co-writer. I wrote all of these words, and she helped me make them into stories. And Blythe was an incredible resource. And Blythe and I met up in January of 2019. I rented an Airbnb in Vancouver, and Blythe and I met up for 4 days, and we just wrote for like 16 hours a day, sometimes till 2 a.m. We were just writing and capturing ideas and going for walks and talking and processing. And the big thing for me, the big goal I have with this book is that I want to help create a guide and a set of resources and tools and ignite the conversation that we can have happy, healthy environments that are intense and demanding, but allow the athletes to reach their goals. You don't have to create a demeaning environment where there's a power dynamic. You can create environments where athletes have agency, where they can also be involved in the decision-making process, and they don't have to be robots, and they can still reach the highest of levels. I want more of that in our sport. I think we've steered off course for the past 30 years, creating the narrative that, you know, you have to be this disciplined, obedient athlete that follows what the coach does and only the coach knows. That's been the narrative. We've all played into it. And so as we move forward, I want the narrative to be that we can create strong, independent athletes who are a part of the process and who take ownership of their gymnastics, and we believe in their ability to be great. That's what I want to happen. I will say, this book, I honestly don't even care if I sell one copy. To me, it was about the process of writing it, and it's the process of sharing it and to open up the conversation. So thank you for being a part of that. And as we move forward, I hope that individuals like you and I can ensure that the sport of gymnastics is one that is seen in a new light, in a new set of eyes, where we are creating more athlete-driven experiences with parent and coach support.
That's really amazing. That's Yeah, that's an amazing goal, and I'm sure you'll sell more than one copy. I mean, it's truly a great book, and I think that's a really great goal, because even when I was still in gymnastics, I felt like I had to be perfect and comply to everything, and if I didn't, then I would fail. And like reading this, I feel like every athlete or every little a girl or boy that reads it, that's growing up, not just in gymnastics, in any sport, and they read it and they will know that it's okay not to always be perfect. So it's truly amazing. But we will come back to the book a little bit at the end as well. But now I know a lot of people are so interested to find out about just who haven't read the book yet, to find out about your journey and about your path in gymnastics. So I know you talk about a lot of these experiences in your book, but for our viewers, I just want to ask first, how did you start gymnastics? Because you're such an accomplished athlete. I mean, Olympic gold medal, you have 3 world championships, bronze medals, you have medaled at the Commonwealth Games, so many accomplishments. How did that all start for you?
Well, I was a crazy kid doing cartwheels around the house. You know, my mom, I had an abundance of energy, and my dad was a hockey player, so he played in the WHL, and he put my brother and I in hockey, and we were exposed to all the sports. We did baseball, we did swimming lessons, you know, we did soccer, we did all the community leagues, all that kind of stuff. But for me, it was around 6 years old that my brother taught me to do a cartwheel, and I was doing cartwheels in the backyard, cartwheels in the living room, cartwheels in the kitchen, and jumping on the bed. And my mom was like, this kid, I need a place for this energy to be channeled. And she put me into gymnastics, and I started in the recreational program at Altador Gymnastics Club. And I did one session. You know, there's the fall, winter, and spring session. So I did a session, and then after that I did another. And at that point I started to show like this talent and this promise just in the rec program. You know, I caught on to things quickly, and I really developed a quick love for this sport. I like to equate it to, like, as a kid you try so many things and some you hate. Like I truly I did not like hockey. It wasn't right for me. I didn't like being on the ice. I didn't know how to skate. I knew how to skate, but I didn't know how to skate with a puck and a stick and score a goal. I just wanted to skate around the arena. So gymnastics was the thing that felt right for me. And everybody has that thing. And I'm so lucky that I found it. And quickly from there, I developed this natural aptitude. I was able to learn things quickly, and I got kind of connected with my coach, Kelly Manjak, who was the men's coach for the Altador Club at that time on the competitive side. He saw me as a youngster. I was strong, I was flexible, and I had an aerial awareness. And he was like, "Ooh, you need to come into my group." So that's kind of where this passion and this love started. And Kelly was my coach from the age of 6 until I was 22, until I won the Olympics in 2004. So that's a pretty unique journey, and it's one that I take a lot of pride in.
And speaking of a coach, I feel like, everyone always sees the athlete win medals and compete, but the coach puts so much into it as well. What role do you think a coach plays in an athlete's journey? And you personally, what role did your coach play in your journey, and how did he kind of help you out?
Well, a coach has a very powerful role, and they can use it for good or they can use it for evil. And I've seen both sides of it in the sport. Luckily, my coach was a coach that was young, and he was inspired, and he was thirsty for knowledge, and he seeked out mentors. He would talk to like the top Russian coaches that had come to Canada, and he'd bring them in for training camps at our club. The role of the coach is to guide, and the role of the coach is to, I feel, to build the athlete up and to help the athlete reach their ultimate potential. And I think also the role of the coach isn't just to create a great athlete, but the role of the coach is to create a person that believes in their ability in those moments, those really groundbreaking moments for an athlete. When you're standing there ready to compete, you have to believe in yourself. And I think the role of the coach is also to create a strong person. You know, an athlete should leave a sport being better than they were before they started that sport. And they should not leave the sport damaged. They should leave the sport built up. They should leave the sport with resources and tools and a skill set that they can take into their life, because sport ends. Look, I'm almost a 39-year-old man. And I still use the lessons from my gymnastics career. However, I can't do very many of the skills that I could do, but I use the things that my coach taught me in planning and focusing, in positive self-talk, in applying myself to a goal and putting the work in. So the role of the coach is huge. And Kelly is someone that I still talk to once a week at least. I talk to him quite often on the phone. He's someone that I consider to be a family member because I spent more time with him in my developmental years than I did with my own family.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And I think you really portray that well in your book as well, like what role your coach really played in your life. But now I want to go back a little bit to your childhood again and ask you, you obviously you dedicated most of your childhood and teenagehood to gymnastics, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you spent most of that time in the gym. Do you ever have regrets, or do you ever think that, oh, you missed out on certain things in your childhood or teenagehood, parties or just playing in the yard with friends or something like that?
Well, I was very lucky that I was able to have a balanced life. Gymnastics was a lot to me. It meant a lot, but I also had friends outside of gymnastics, and I did go to parties, and I had a social life outside of gymnastics, but I was given the ability to make the choice of what was important to me. And, through different periods of the year, I would get more focused on gymnastics, especially as I got older, as the Olympic Games approached, or World Championships or Commonwealth Games. I made the conscious decision for myself to tune out my social life, to go out and not drink, to be the designated driver and be home in bed by 11 p.m. Those sorts of things. Those are all conscious choices that I made. But I do feel that I had a very balanced life. However, Elisabeth, when I look back, I'm doing a lot of reconciliation right now. I'm reading a lot of books about the young women who are survivors of Larry Nassar, and reading about their gymnastic careers, and just trying to reconcile, like, what were some of the things and the misconceptions that were present and prevalent in the time that I grew up in the sport. And one of the big ones that I think, I don't have regret in my life, but I look back and say I probably could have done this differently, was vacation time. So when I was a kid, it was ingrained in me, just because it was the way that was believed in the system, that you had to train as much as possible. And if you weren't in competition season, you were in new skill and strength gain season. So in the summers, my family would go away on vacation, and I would stay in Calgary, and my aunt, or I would stay at my grandma's, or my aunt would come stay with me, and my mom and dad and brother would go on family vacations. And I look back on my career, and I wonder if I still would have been able to reach the same level that I did if I would have taken a 2-week vacation in the summer. And the answer is yes. The answer absolutely is yes. And I've discovered that more as I got older. When I was training, coming back from my 2 broken legs in 2008, I went to Hawaii for a week on a hosting trip, and I didn't train in gymnastics, but I did some runs, I did some jogs, I did Pilates, etc. And I actually came back stronger. I came back faster, and I could lift more weights, and my mind was clear. So now, as a parent and as a business owner, I realize you don't have to think about it all the time, and you don't have to completely be obsessed. You can take a break, and it will still be there when you come back. So that's the one thing I wish I would have done. And that's one of the messages I do want to convey in my book promotion here, is that it's okay to take a vacation. In fact, it can actually be good for your mind and for your body.
Yeah, that's a really good lesson, I feel like, because as you said, most athletes, they just think if they want to achieve something major, they have to be obsessed with it 24/7. So I think that's a really good lesson for any, especially young up and coming athlete, to read this book and realize that. But now I want to ask you, obviously you competed in 3 Olympics, major accomplishment. When you were young, did you know that subconsciously kind of that one day you'll go to the Olympics, or did you think about it, or was it kind of just a surprise for you?
No, it was an obsession. I thought about it all the time. And it's so weird because subconsciously, I almost had this knowing that I was going to become an Olympian. I wanted to so badly. And I looked at my mentors like Mark Tewksbury, the great Canadian swimmer, and Jennifer Wood, who was an amazing Canadian gymnast who represented Canada at the 92 Games, who trained at my club. And it put on like this new layer of belief. Yes, I deeply believed inside of me that I was going to be an Olympian. And not only that, but I had this strong belief that I would be an Olympic champion as well. And it was almost like a magnet that pulled me along. And I can only equate it to like a meditation where you're sitting there and you're breathing and you kind of get off course, but then you bring it back to your breath. And for me, my breath was the Olympic Games. That's what drove me along. And it was like this pull. It pulls me along. Yeah. Well, I was a little crazy as a kid.
Yeah, well, I feel like you kind of have to be if you want to accomplish that much. But what did it feel like when you finally made the year 2000 Sydney Olympic team? How did it feel like? Obviously, making any Olympics is amazing, but since this was your goal for so long, how did it feel to finally make it?
Well, there was like a giddy sense of excitement, a kid going to Disneyland the night before. You know something great is going to happen, and you've been waiting for it for so long. So there was that sense. There was also a sense of just almost like validation. I had been working for so long for this, and then it happened, and it's like, okay, you put your mind to something and you work hard towards it, and you apply yourself, and you show up, and you keep believing, and you keep trying to overcome these obstacles, and it does lead to great things. So there was a validation, but there was also a sense of like this excitement, like I was a kid at a candy store.
And I feel like each Olympics that you competed on were special in their own different ways. But which Olympics would you say out of the three are the most memorable to you?
Well, I remember them all so deeply and so differently. The 2000 Olympics were my experience Olympics. That's where I was young and excited, and I was just absorbing it all, and I was partying and having fun, and it was my like experience Olympics. I loved it. But I left those games wanting more, and I knew that I could accomplish more. I knew I had done well, but I knew that I could do better. And so the 2004 Olympics were more like my dream come true Olympics. I was the word ready flashes through my mind. I was there. I was present. I was there for a job. I wanted to kick ass and I wanted to win. And like, there's something powerful in that momentum of the athlete that's going in to win. Like, I was unstoppable. If I felt like a superhero version of myself, I could have pummeled through like 1,000 glass walls. Like, I just was ready to go. And then in 2008, it was a bit of a different feeling. It was more of a sense of like peace, because I had to overcome this crazy injury, broke both of my legs 11 months before, and standing there competing, I was like so appreciative, and there was like this new gratitude. Like, I didn't appreciate in 2000 the opportunity. I was excited about it, but I didn't like actually sit there and recognize like the appreciation. And same with 2004. But in 2008, I was present in a place where I was just like, I was almost floating on this cloud of just feeling really grateful for the actual opportunity to be there. I realized how important that actually was.
Absolutely. And kind of ties into my next question, like what made you continue after each Olympics? Because I feel like the Olympics is the pinnacle of each athlete's career. I mean, okay, in 2000, I understand, but then in 2004, you won the Olympic gold medal on floor exercisers. Where else can you go? What made you continue after that?
Well, I think you're seeing it a bit in someone like Simone Biles right now. She's achieved the ultimate, yet she's still feels she has potential in the sport, and no one can tell her what her potential looks like. She feels that within. She knows it. And I kind of felt that after 2004. I know in 2000, like Igor Virov, who was from Latvia, he won, and he was someone who I competed against and actually beaten, and he won the Olympics. So I was like, oh my gosh, someone who won the Olympics. I've beaten him, and he's my friend. And like, oh my gosh, I could taste it. It was on the tip of my tongue. I was like, I'm going after this. after 2004, it was a bit of a different shift. It was like, oh, wow, like I can actually make some money doing this.
Mhm.
And I can lead this team and I can build the reputation of gymnastics. And so it was a bit more of an external pull that I felt. It was more about the money. It was more about the medals. It was more about um, those external sort of superficial things. And I hate to say it, but like, yeah, it's nice to be able to make a bit of cash doing the sport and to build a life.
Yeah, for sure.
That's something I didn't have an opportunity to do before. And that, that never is fulfilling. That's never satisfying. That always feels gross inside. You're standing there competing and you're thinking about not screwing up so that you don't lose a sponsor or you don't lose funding for your team. That never feels good. But after I broke my legs, the pull towards the Beijing Games was that, I wanted to prove to myself that I could apply myself to the sport again, without thinking about the medals, without thinking about any of that stuff, and just finding the pure joy in the journey of trying to make it back. So those were the polls. And then after 2008, as I allude to in the book, it's like I literally felt nothing. And that's when I knew I was done. That's when I knew. And that's what they say as an athlete. When you know, you just know. And I was very lucky to be able to retire on my own terms and not have an injury determine that for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And now, speaking of your injury, like as you said, you broke both of your legs at the 2007 World Championships at the training session.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's devastating for any athlete to have such a tremendous injury, especially like when you can't. It's not that you can't train; you couldn't even walk or do much. I mean, what was the hardest part about your recovery and about being injured in such a significant way?
I think the hardest part was keeping the belief in myself that I could actually make it back to the games.
Mm-hmm.
That was hard at first. I think with any new thing, when you have this new goal or you're trying to start a new business or whatever, at first it's easy because you're up really high and you're like ready to go and you're ready to rock and roll. But then we all dip to that point in the bottom, that trough of sorrow where it gets hard and you no longer have that same excitement and that same energy. And you kind of realize your timeline is not as long as you originally thought it was. It comes faster, and time is the only thing that just constantly moves. No matter what, the next minute brings you 1 minute closer to whatever that goal is that you have. So that was the hardest part. There was a lot of self-doubt. There was a lot of having to convince myself that I could make it back. Being injured sucks. It just really does. And especially when you're on such a high, like at those Worlds, I was very ready to compete. And then literally it all got pulled out from under me and I lost my shape very quickly. And that was very challenging. But as anything, you start building momentum again. And that's my favorite part about sport is when you start building momentum towards something and all the distractions around you start to be turned off by the blinders on. And you just start to feel like you're picking up and you're getting faster and you're getting stronger and things are starting to happen. Like that is the exciting time as an athlete.
And that's amazing that you got through that. And literally 11 months after your injury, you were back on the Olympic team. I mean, that's phenomenal. And I feel like a lot of athletes, when they get seriously injured like that, some give up because it's just too difficult. And, I don't blame them. It's extremely difficult. What piece of advice would you give to athletes dealing with injuries that are preventing them from competing?
Make the most of today because today is all you have. And if you put yourself today 6 months into the future in your mind, it's going to be really hard to conceptualize that because where you are now is not where you're going to be in 6 months. So you have to just be in the moment, be in the today, be in the uncomfortable position of what today might be, and try to find the victory in it. Like try to get one small thing out of today so you can lay in bed at night and feel like you had a small little victory. And also realize that what today brought, whether good or bad, tomorrow's going to be different, and it might be better, or it might be worse, and you just have to be prepared for that. Very much like a meditation, you have to just keep coming back to the goal. You have to just keep coming back to the goal and trying to make small incremental progress each day. That's all you can do. You have no control over the other stuff. It's just how you show up each day and how your attitude is.
And now going to, after your injury, you made the Olympic team. You competed at your third and final Olympics in 2008. When you finished those Olympics, did you kind of know right away that you were done with gymnastics and that you were ready to retire, or did the feeling kind of come gradually?
Yeah, it started to kind of start to bubble to the surface in the days after. There was a lot of reconciliation that happened for me in the first day, because I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I truly felt like I had a routine that should have made the final. I thought my routine was very high difficulty, and I thought it was executed quite well. I had a big hop on the first landing, and on my dismount, the double-double, I landed low and took a step over to the side. So I was disappointed not to move forward to the final. I had those dreams, and that did pull me along. The thought of, Olympic champion makes the final and wins another medal, like after breaking both legs, was a great headline. And when that didn't happen, that was really, really tough in my heart and in my head. I was disappointed for sure. But through a bit of a cathartic process, just kind of processing the emotions and speaking with my sports psychologist, Hap Davis, just realizing that, I had done everything I could have done in the lead up to those games. I literally uncovered every stone, and the routine that I laid out there on the floor was the best routine I could have done. And I had no regrets. And that is what success is, Success is a feeling you get inside. It's not an external thing. It's not getting the gold medal. It's not getting whatever that looks like. There's other ways to achieve success, and I felt it inside. So, that's where the weird thing was happening inside of my head. It's like, should I be proud, or should I feel like a big piece of shit because I didn't win another Olympic medal? Like, where am I at? And the media kind of hounds on you. Shewfelt fails in comeback. Like, that's a headline when you don't win again and you're an Olympic champion. So that was hard to reconcile. But when it was all, it took me about a good 48 hours to process through that. And I went to the gym for another training session, and I was there, and I was just like, I don't want to be here. Like, I'm done. I don't want to put chalk on my hands. Everything hurts. I had this knowing, and I didn't know what came next, but I just had this knowing that my time as a competitive athlete was done. Yeah.
And what would you say, the hardest part about retiring? Because you had this whole routine for your whole life, training, competition, training, break, training. What was the hardest part about retiring as a professional athlete?
I think the hardest part of retirement for me was the lack of a goal, or the lack of stability and security. I felt like I was in a free fall. I had let go of this trapeze, and I was flipping wildly through the air, and I didn't know where to land. And I felt so like scattered, and I felt like I was just constantly waiting for the next thing to come to me. And I had great connections, and I had great network, and I had made a lot of friends in the industry, and I didn't know how to use that. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to navigate that next phase, and I felt very alone. And like you said, my routine was getting up and going to the gym, coming home, eating lunch, having a nap, getting up, going back to the gym. Like, I trained 2 times a day, every day for 10 years. And it was my teammates and my coach and the gym were my place of comfort. They were my friends. That's where I felt like I belonged. And so all of a sudden I came home, and it was like I climbed up the cliff to the peak at the Olympics, and then I literally dropped off the edge. I didn't climb down. I didn't know what to do. And so that was the hardest part for me. Just not feeling like I had a place where I belonged and where my feet were firm on the ground. And I think we all look for a sense of purpose and a sense of belonging in our lives. That's what gives us a sense of, stability. And I didn't have that. And that was really, really tough for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And when was the moment when you finally kind of found peace, were in peace with yourself, and kind of found that maybe new goal or new passion or something, a drive again? When were you at peace with your retirement?
Well, I think, I've been retired now. It's 2021. I've been retired for 12 years.
Mhm.
And I still have moments, even though I feel very good in my life. I've got a great family, and I've got a daughter who's 5, and I own a gymnastics center, and I get to do broadcasting to CBC, and I've written a book, and like, there's a lot of things, but I still feel I'm never going to have that same feeling I did as an athlete.
Mhm.
And so I've just learned through the years to process it differently, that I'm never going to have that same feeling. So I need to stop looking for that same feeling. Now
Yeah.
I get to look for different feelings. And what I look for in my life now is not that heightened sense of chasing this big goal, but a sense of peace in where I am in my life, and that I'm making an impact in other people's lives and making their lives better. That truly is where I feel a sense of satisfaction, is when I get to be at the gym and work with kids and lead them in fun warm-ups and see them smile. Like, that makes me feel great.
Mhm.
I would say it took a good 5 years after retirement to kind of feel like my feet were on the ground again.
Mhm.
And then now it's been 12 years, and I finally feel like I don't dream in gymnastics all the time. For 10 years, I dreamt in routines. I would lay there and imagine myself still competing, and then I'd wake up and be like, I don't do that anymore. But now I finally dream about different things, and
Mhm.
just putting on my grips and standing there and saluting the judge, getting ready for a high bar routine.
Mhm. That's amazing. Yeah, truly. And you were talking like even sometimes now when you think about gymnastics and think about that feeling. Now, do you obviously you still follow gymnastics? You do commentary for CBC. How do you feel when you watch current gymnasts compete at the Olympics, at World Championships? How do you feel? Do you get, I know you're commentating and trying
Mhm.
to analyze it, but in your head, do you sometimes feel like, oh, I wish that I was out there? Like, what goes through your head when you're watching them?
Well, I actually think the exact opposite. I'm like, thank God I'm not out there, because the athletes now, the sport has evolved so much since 2008 when I retired. The things that they're doing. I mean, Nikita Nagorny from Russia just did a triple back pike on the floor at the European Championships. It's crazy. Um, but I still get a bit of those butterflies when I broadcast. I love that feeling of being live and having to be on. And it's almost like the way I broadcast is like sticking the landings in gymnastics. It's like going through the routine, and I know the things I kind of know what I want to say and how I want to like spotlight on this athlete and the story I want to tell. And when I nail it, I feel great. Um, but yes, I'll tell you a little secret about the way that I commentate. I take my shoes off, and I stand, and I have my headset on, and my arms are flailing, and I'm like, literally, I'm doing the routine, and I'm like doing iron crosses, and I'm sticking landings, and like I'm sweating by the end because I'm fully in it. I'm like slamming my finger at the screen, and just I'm trying so hard to um, like to convey the emotion and the feeling and the greatness of these routines to the audience at home. The thing I want to do as a broadcaster is I want the audience at home to feel something. I want them to want the athlete to do great. I want them to feel that excitement and to know what's going into this moment and to know how great this is. So I take a huge responsibility there, and I also want to educate people. Gymnastics is not an easy sport to understand. It's very complicated. The rules are like 260-page document. Like, who the hell reads that? In tennis, you shoot the ball, it lands in the lines, you're in, it lands on the line, you're in, it lands outside, it's out, right? Like, it's very, very clear cut. But gymnastics is like, well, if your feet go on the bar here and then you do it in a straight body position, it's a higher difficulty value. It's very hard to capture all that. So I feel a huge responsibility to be able to educate the viewer to know this person was better because.
Yeah.
And as you can tell, I get riled up, and I love it. It seriously is my new sport, is Olympic commentating.
That's amazing. Well, now I know the secret to good commentary. I never thought that obviously I listened to your broadcasts when you did the commentary. I never thought that that's what was happening behind the scenes. That's amazing though, because you're absolutely right. Like when my parents watch gymnastics, they're like, "Whoa, why did that person win?" Like, it's so hard to understand because they're all so good at at the higher level. They're
Mhm.
all so amazing. So it's great that you portray it in such an amazing way. But yeah, that's really funny. I had no idea. That's great. And kind of speaking of gymnastics in Canada, it's not the most popular sport by far, unfortunately. I love gymnastics and I wish it was more popular. What do you think needs to be done in Canada to maybe make gymnastics a bit of a more popular sport? Because now dominating is obviously hockey, basketball, baseball, all the major sports.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think needs to be done to kind of make gymnastics more popular?
Yeah. I think that gymnastics has kind of two tiers to it, right? It's got two folds. You've got the recreational, foundational side of the sport, and I think that is quite popular. And I think that's where we need to really target our focus on ensuring that every kid does gymnastics. That's going to help gymnastic clubs, but it's also going to help kids. It really does create this physical literacy, and they can transition into any other sport. So that's where the marketing focus needs to be, in my opinion, is on gymnastics is the foundation. I think gymnastics and swimming need to pair up, and swimming is the life skill, gymnastics is the physical literacy skill. And so, but in terms of the elite side of the sport, it is hard to get that traction, especially when you don't have big events happening here. You know, you've got the Raptors and you've got the Flame, like the NHL teams, and they're playing games like 2 times a week at home, and you've got tens of thousands of people going into the stadiums, and there's just the brand. It's just so recognizable. Where in gymnastics in Canada, we typically have meets in hockey arenas that are emptied out, and there's like 3 people in the stands, right? And usually it's the mom, the grandma, and the aunt. So it is hard to market this sport. It's very challenging. It's inaccessible to a lot of people at the elite level. But I think we have great athletes and ambassadors, like Ellie Black is one who I think of. We have Rosie McLennan and Trampoline, who are great spokespeople and who are genuinely like amazing role models. I always think of my young daughter, and the people I want her to look up to are people like Rosie and people like Ellie, who are hardworking, who are genuine, who are caring, who are like really, really great role models and mentors. So that's a selling point as well. I don't think gymnastics is ever going to be the most popular sport. It just isn't, because it's not a sport that many people can do, whereas everybody can play basketball. You can shoot hoops outside, and you don't have to. The difference between being a great basketball player and a recreational basketball player, I think there's a smaller gap, you know. Whereas gymnastics, like to compete at that highest of levels, you have to train 24 to 30 hours a week, and you're doing these crazy skills that take years to learn. So I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that when the Olympics come around, there's 3 sports that are the big ones. We call them the big 3 in the industry. It's athletics, it's swimming, and it's gymnastics. And so we need to be able to capitalize on that opportunity for exposure, which is going to come this summer here in Tokyo.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm so excited for those Olympics. I hope COVID gets managed and nothing gets postponed or canceled, because I'm really excited. But now I want to talk a bit about your accomplishments outside of gymnastics, because you have outside of competitive gymnastics, I would rather say, because you have a lot of those as well. You opened in 2014. You opened your own gymnastics gym, Shewfelt Gymnastics. And you said there are programs for ages of all, for children of all ages. So you chose for the gym to be more kind of a welcoming place for everyone, not so much of a professional level where you coach Olympians and stuff like that. Why did you make that decision to kind of open a gym where you train more of kids of all ages, not necessarily professionals?
I had experienced 20 years in the sport at the elite level, and I loved it. But I also realized that I trained a lot of time by myself, and it wasn't, at the end of the day, it wasn't a great business model. And also, it wasn't where my heart was. My heart was in it as an athlete. I wanted to push myself to that level. However, as a business owner and as a coach, I just have no desire to create that environment. And I also know that many gyms in the country can serve those athletes. You know, you've got great gyms that are coast to coast that have the setup and have the ability to offer that programming and to do it well. So I didn't want to compete with them. I wanted to create an environment that maybe if someone came through our doors that showed that potential, I can happily pass them on to another gym that can better serve them.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I wanted to make gymnastics accessible to as many people as possible. And I wanted to make gymnastics a place of fun and a place of foundation of that learning. And that's just what felt right in my heart. And I've learned throughout my career to trust my gut. So that's the direction I went. And it's really fun. You know, it's a great, happy space where thousands of kids before COVID, now it's a lot less than that,
Yeah.
but got to experience a wonderful sport. And the reality is that a lot of kids are going to do gymnastics for, 1 year and then never do it again. But I hope that in that 1 year, they get a basic foundation to move forward in their life.
Mm-hmm. That's such a great lesson and such a great way to look at gymnastics, because I feel like a lot of the time is just looked at from a professional perspective, but that's amazing. And now, unfortunately, we are running close with time here. I could talk about your experiences all day, but a few final questions. What would you say is the biggest lesson that gymnastics has taught you in life?
Persistence pays off.
Mm-hmm.
You have to show up and you have to do the work. Nothing good comes easily. You know, nothing comes instantly. You have to show up and you have to do the work. And if you're consistent and persistent and you do the numbers and you put in the work, good things will happen. Gymnastics taught me that, and life has taught me that. So if you want something, you have to put in the work to get it.
Mm-hmm. And now you've written this great book. And do you have a next goal? Do you have any other major project that you're currently working on, or maybe want to work on in the future?
Mm-hmm. It's funny that you ask that, because every morning I take my dog for a big walk and I contemplate and I listen to podcasts and I just try to process and think. And today I was like thinking that, at this point in my life, I actually don't have a distinct goal. Writing the book was a really big one for me, and I put a lot of effort into that. And now I'm going to be promoting it and trying to spread the messages of positive coaching. So that, I guess, is a goal in itself. But, I'm kind of in that place where I don't know what comes next. And I'm just trying to get comfortable with that, in realizing that I don't have to figure it out right now. I wanted so badly when I retired from gymnastics to be out of that uncomfortable place. But now I'm getting older and I'm able to realize that, I'm just going to sit in here for a while, and good things are on the horizon. They are, and something good is going to happen. This has been a challenging year, Elisabeth, for everybody, with COVID. And as a business owner, like, I'm literally trying to keep my business alive. And maybe after COVID is done, then I can start to see more hope and more light. But right now I'm just kind of in that survival place where I'm not in a state of developing new goals.
Yeah, I feel like it's really hard for everyone right now, but this book, really amazing. Make it happen. If you want to tell everyone where they can find it, where they can purchase it.
Yeah, so the book is available on my website, kyleshewfelt.com. You can buy it through all the retailers online, Amazon, Indigo, Barnes & Noble, etc. And it's going to be in bookstores in May, in select bookstores in different markets. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, Kyle, thank you so much for joining me here today. I could talk about your experiences and everything all day, but if you guys want to hear more, please purchase the book. It's truly inspirational. Also, remember that this show can be heard on Zigno TV channel 249, 250, and 251, and also on the SpanglishSportsWorld.ca website. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and make sure to tune in next week next Saturday at 1 p.m. This has been Elisabeth Rositsan and Kyle Shewfelt. Thank you so much.
Thank you.